What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. My name is Adam. I am your host. We are bringing on a special guest, someone who I have been listening to since I got back into the hobby, and I'm fanboying out a little bit here because as I got back into the hobby, his podcast was one of the ones that I listened to. It was one of the only ones back in early 2018. We have Drew from Let Me Get That Podagraph. How we doing today?
What's going on, man? That's a hell of an intro. I appreciate it. And you're one of the only shows I listen to nowadays. So it's come full circle. But yeah, man, back in 2018, there definitely weren't that many. But doing great, man. Really, really excited to come on the show.
Absolutely. And if you are wondering, maybe you've heard the episode that I was on of his show. I think it was episode 111 that was released about a week ago. I was a guest on his show. And if you are interested in going to check that out, and I suggest that you do, because like I said, his podcast is, I think, one of the better hobby podcasts out there. It's not only investing. It's not only about the hobby. It's got got a bunch of different things, but I mean, it kind of takes a very similar approach that I have where it's very much of a narrative of the hobby as a whole. So for you, like with the podcast and with cards, like I'm interested to hear about your origin story about how everything got started.
Sure. The podcast or just collecting in general or everything?
I mean, I guess we can get into collecting and then into the podcast.
Okay. Well, like most people, I think I have the normal guy story where you were a collector as a kid and then you took some time off around college. You did your thing. I took that time, quit, and decided to play music and traveled and played music and toured and everything and stopped doing that. Had a child, had a son, and I don't even remember. I remember being at Walmart one day. I can remember when I got back in the hobby. I was at Walmart. I found a blaster box. Shocker, you could find them. And I didn't know what I was doing. It was some Sage hit, one of those things. Opened it up, hit a HaHa Clinton Dix auto out of 5. Thought, wow, this is neat. I can buy boxes and there's autographs in it now. From that second, I'm a journalist major from East Carolina. I've done a lot of writing through countless different websites and different things from sports to music, everything. So, broadcast and print journalism was always in my DNA, and I was immediately hooked on the hobby. And I started looking heavily into it, reading everything, finding out everything I could about it. And then, like you said, in 2018, there were so few shows out. There was Fat Packs. There was a show I'd prefer not to name. And then there was like maybe one more. And I was like, there's a spot here for this. Now, did I expect the hobby to blow up like this? No. I had a great friend of mine, Stu, who lived close by me. And we both loved cards. We loved hanging out with each other. And we wanted to talk about them. So we just decided to start it and talk it. But that's really the origin of the story, was just wanting to use the stuff that I'd been doing forever in some different outlet. We'd never expected it to lead to any sort of monetary value. I definitely didn't expect it to be leading to me owning my own business. I mean, it's taken off in tremendous different ways. But the normal story of taking some time off, jumping back in, and diving head first and never looking back.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's very similar. For me, it was Pokemon, not as much sports cards, but actually the name Herosforsale. I've talked about this on a couple different episodes and on my podcast. It's actually an ode to the old card shop that used to be in my town next to the Dairy Queen. So it's, like I said, like you were saying, very similar story. A lot of people getting back into it, and podcasting was definitely something that I had been interested in. I mean, I had a podcast before Herosforsale where I just was literally like, it's actually funny, you kind of do these random things, and it was like from my work to the train was about like a 10-minute walk. So I would just like have my headphones in and talk about sports for and I think I did 40 or 50 episodes of that, and then kind of transitioned into sports cards. And so for you, I don't know if you remember this. I think we talked, or you do probably, because we talked about it on your show. So I'm not sure if you, the first time we ever met was at the 2019 National. I came up to the booth, and at the time there still wasn't really that many episodes. I mean, even my show was only 4 episodes in at that point. I think my review of the 2019 National was the 5th episode, I came up to the table, and I mean, you gave me a t-shirt, and you were extremely nice. And I'm just, that was super cool to meet you at the National for the first time. And then hopefully in these upcoming Nationals, we'll get to meet again. But that's a story that I definitely like sharing now that you're on the show and I can actually share the story.
No, it's all, that's the greatest thing about this hobby, and that's the greatest thing about the National. I remember that interaction because, to tell you the truth, back at the time, podcasts weren't a big thing. And so, we were out there and we had good plays. We were on the Podcasters Roundtable on the main stage. It was getting bigger. But, I remember all those interactions. I might not remember the names, and everything right away. But I remember those interactions because it means the world to me. Like, ever since, whether it be writing, whether it be I do tons of different podcasts outside the sports world, whether it be a football show. I do a podcast on Psych, the TV show. I just random different stuff. And no matter what it is, but when people want to listen, when people appreciate it and they like it, I don't take that for granted. It really means the world to me. That's what I've wanted to do, whether it be songwriting, whether it be writing about the Panthers, whether it be writing about hoops being priced way too high, whatever it is, it's something I love. And when people, those interactions stick with me, and it's pretty awesome that we've been able to show swap now. And then here in a couple months, hopefully we'll just do a show together, just a spur of the moment show together at the National or something.
Right.
That's the beautiful thing about this hobby right here.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, you mentioned that you were a writer and you wrote, you co-wrote an article that I thought was pretty interesting that recently came out, probably depending on when this episode comes out, either last week or 2 weeks ago. It's about the Luka Hoops card, and that there's 2 different versions that aren't they're within PSA. They're not actually said that they're 2 different versions. So I'm interested, how did you, first of all, how'd you find that out? And then second of all, what was the process of kind of writing all that, writing the article, and then who did you work with on the article too?
Okay, well, I wrote the article with Lowing Cards, which is a website that I've had a ton of respect for. I've worked with him in the past on certain little things, had him on the show, and just really respect his writing, knew he had a good reach and would want to do it. So I'm a big fan of collaboration in this hobby. Obviously running Hobby Hotline as well, doing countless podcasts with other, technically competition in this industry. I look at it as, friendly competition, and I love it. And I like working with other people. And so I wanted to do this with somebody, especially the writing side, that had that reach, because I haven't been doing as much writing, which is going to be changing, but haven't been doing as much. So the writing aspect, I really wanted to be able to get that out there. But I found out about the Luka actually down here while I was working for Gen Met Prep and PSA stuff. We were talking about it, and we were looking at the Luka stuff, and we saw these parallels, and it looked really weird because the slabs were slabbed the same. And when I saw they were slabbed the same and they looked completely different, and it was obviously not a printing error or not like an overbleed or anything. I worked at printing companies. I know how this stuff works. This was a deliberate addition of a blue line. It's the only way possible to print it. And so when that happened, I started looking into it, figuring out where you could find it. And I found out that Panini doesn't recognize it. I spoke with someone from Panini. It's in the article. They straight up told me that was the team set version. Well, no, it's not, because you can go right onto PSA's website and look at what the team set version actually is. And so, they just completely deny and ignore that it exists. And it's not just Luka. There's other rookies and other players who have that same parallel in the set. So it's obviously not just like it happened on some Lukas, but it's interesting to me because we're getting to a point where Luka cards are selling for $50,000. And if we're looking at a parallel in hoops, that could be one of the rarest of at least pop report wise, graded wise, that you're going to have out there. 10s on these are almost impossible because they were never sealed in a wax pack. They were put in a blister pack loose. Like, the pops on these are going to be super low. Team sets are not widely distributed. They're very hard to find. And only about half or a third of the team sets, it looks like, even had the variation in it. So it's probably his rarest hoops rookie, which his hoops rookie being one of his probably top 5 rookies. I figured with the way things are going, it needs to be recognized. And for Panini, BGS, and PSA to not recognize it, I think is doing a disservice if we're going to call no-name Frank Thomas's, the fuckface cards, all these different things where we've had a million examples of where they will look at a card and say, okay, yes, these are even printing defects that we'll look at. But yet here they blatantly added something in to make a card look different, which is the definition of a parallel, yet refuse to acknowledge it. And I mean, you're looking at it now, ever since the article came out. I am happy about that. If you look at it now, the cards have gone up about 100% in price, and the team sets are about impossible to find now. Like, people are scooping them up because I think they see that eventually, I mean, I'm going to keep working, keep tagging them, keep everything I can until they acknowledge it, because I think it's something that needs to be acknowledged. And like I said, I in this hobby, if we can change it for the better, that's great. And I think this is something that, Panini overlooked, and, let's fix it.
Totally. And I think the thing with grading that I've been thinking a lot about is that it's such like a fine line where, like, when we want to send in cards, obviously we want all of our cards to come back as a 10, but
Right.
at the same time, like, you don't want necessarily all of them to be a 10, because then that kind of devalues what the 10 actually is. And I think with this card, and then just with cards in general, like, I think also, PSA is kind of in a tough spot there too, because obviously for their business, they want to have the best grading card company. So it really is such a fine line and a tough balance for them between, like, do they want everybody to have the PSA 10, or do they want to really show that there's value in maybe some lower end PSA valued cards? And I think another thing, like, if you're comparing like a card like a 2018 card versus, a card from like maybe the 60s or 70s or 80s, like the production of the card has gotten so much better that it almost feels like there should be a different kind of grading scale for some of these modern cards versus some of the vintage stuff. Because if you compare, and I know this is a pretty wild example and something that I was recently looking into, but if you look at like a card like the Nolan Ryan 1969 PSA 10, there's only one of them. Like, there's only one. And I've seen some interesting articles about why there's only one, and maybe that it's kind of a little bit some weird stuff going on. But like, then you look at a player like Acuna, there's like 12,000 PSA 10. So it's like, at what point, that's sort of something I've been thinking about. It's like, it's such a fine line between grading, and I'm interested to see what do you have to say about that?
Well, it definitely is. And I mean, there's a couple of fine lines in grading. One, everybody that's complaining about that backlog of cards at PSA, don't complain about that backlog. If they had a 0 backlog tomorrow, do you know what happened to graded cards? The price would plummet because they'd all be on the market. I mean, the backlog helps fund increases in prices. But I agree with you 100%, especially when it comes to lower graded cards, 8s and 9s. Kevin Durant is probably the last example I've seen where 7s and 8s for a modern card command good money. And, LeBron's and stuff too, maybe some Giannis, but Durant rookies in particular, because you had the different colored fronts and then the black backgrounds made for a tough grade, plus the quality control issues. But I think it's high time nowadays that people start to really value PSA 9s and even 8s in some things. There are products that have come out this year where you see it all the time. People are complaining about quality control left and right. Well, if it's a product that's so bad quality control wise, I would rather PSA not grade it on a scale, but grade it the right way, and let's put some value in some 8s. Let's put some value in some 9s. But in terms of just regular cards, like let's take basketball, for example, Prism. A Prism base 9 is something that I think if there's cards that I think are almost guaranteed to go up in value, it's those key rookies in the nines, because the tens are always going to go up. They're always going to be worth the most. But I think where you're going to see the most percentage wise, at least, increase is going to be in those nines, because people are going to see that, okay, Cardamundi and everybody's quality controls kind of gone to crap. So there's a lot less tens than there were, but there's also nothing wrong with having a nine, because I hate to tell you, a lot of your raw cards are not nines. They're sevens and six, sevens and eights. And so, I mean, I think I completely agree, and I think people need to start paying a lot more attention to nines, and you're starting to see the trend a little bit already. Some cards are really starting to have a strong value in nines, and not as big as of a discrepancy between that 9 and that 10.
Right. I mean, I totally agree, and I think it's within the hobby. I definitely think I skew more towards like siding with companies when it comes to kind of my opinions, for sure. But I definitely think that, like, you know, with these modern cards being made so much better, like a 9, I almost think that they should change how from 2018 to now should have a different type of scale, where a 10 is much harder to get, because I think another thing kind of with that is that, like, there's so many new collectors and new people coming into the hobby, and they see the PSA 10 as like the card to get, and the Prism PSA 10 is like the card to get, that they may not even realize that, like, a PSA 9 is, honestly, and it's crazy to say, they may not even understand what a PSA 9 is, like, and that's just because they came into this and they see so many articles where only people are talking about PSA 10s. I mean, I definitely agree. I think the PSA 9s and the PSA 8s, it's becoming a lot harder and we should honestly want that, because, like, that would then make the 10s more valuable as well. So it's like, and the 10, I think also kind of a tricky thing there too, is like, the 10s, we want to have the most value and we want that value to continue to go up. But, like, if a 9 and an 8 don't have the value, I don't know. There's just a weird, like, thing there that I think there could be an adjustment somewhere in the market dynamics. Like, it could even be where, like, Prism versus Optic, it's a 9 versus a 10. Like, I think that should be kind of how we should look at it. Just because, like, if we're comparing top products, within basketball, there's maybe 6 or 7 that are top, and, like, if we're talking really top, there's probably 4. There's probably like Prism, Select, Optic, and then Mosaic, I think, is kind of coming into that conversation. I would say Mosaic over like a Hoops or a Donruss right now, but, like, you could argue any of those. But for you also talked about doing so many different shows and being on a ton of different podcasts and shows. Like, was that something that you intentionally were looking to get into, or was it like you join one show and then the next thing you know, you're in 5 shows? Like, I'm just interested to see kind of like how that went for you.
Oh, when I started Let Me Get That Podagraph, Stu and I had a vision of making that show and that show only the best. We had planned on eventually doing offshoots, like video shows, and everything, but never in a million years did I think I would be doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 shows now, and a couple more coming up here soon that I'm being added to. But when Stu unfortunately passed away, I kind of altered everything and took what we had set forward and what we had planned on doing, and figured out a way to do it, and honor what we had set that we were going to do, just doing it with other people and doing it with people that he had respected. And, it kind of snowballed. I mean, Hobby Hotline was an idea that Rob from Go GTS and I, while we were standing outside the National smoking a cigarette. Sorry, Rob, for outing you on that. But sitting there talking, and we came up with the idea, just BSing around. And a couple months later, we're on the air. And Roughing the Passer is something that I'd always wanted to work with. John Newman, he's one of my best friends. He does Sports Card Nation. And I'd wanted to do something with him. So we did that. And, it just kept building and building and building. And, I kind of caught the bug. Like, you find that niche on something that you truly enjoy. And it's not, I mean, podcasts, it helps. And there's a little money to be made, but in no way, shape, or form is it like what pays the bills. My business pays the bills. But I find myself wanting to do more. I find myself wanting to put that information out there and to do more, because honestly, I look at a lot of the stuff that's out there now and it frustrates me, because there's so much new stuff that is so wrong, and just so the way it's presented is wrong, what they're saying is wrong, and there's so many new people in this industry that are taking it for gospel. I mean, I'd almost like to do it just to tell those people to like look, like, don't listen to these people. But it just kept coming and coming. The shows and the ideas kept forming. And, in 2018, like you said, like when we started, there weren't that much. But as I see everything grow, I see the opportunity for all these other reasons. I've probably got ideas for 30 different shows right now. And if I could do them all myself, I would. And I plan on trying to get someone in some shape or form, and possibly me, to do all of them eventually. Yeah, they keep coming, and I love doing it. I mean, it's something that I truly am 100% passionate about. I could talk on this stuff forever. I love interviewing people. I've probably done about like 4,000 interviews in my life, going back to, all the way to high school. Decades of it now. And, just something I want to keep doing. And the hobby right now is more entertaining than it's ever been before. And so I think there's an opportunity there for just a lot of different fun content, and people seem to love it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And when it comes to content, something that when I talk to people, they ask me like, what exactly are you doing? How do you make so much content? And I mean,
Right.
it's just because I love doing it. Like, and I mean, that's kind of the big thing for me, is like, I can, some days there's 4 or 5 Instagram posts, some days it's only 2, but it's like, there's always, it's an outlet that I enjoy talking about. And I mean, another thing I think that you talked about that was a really good point was like, there's so many new kind of content people and just people in general coming into the hobby. And I mean, even I usually try and give at least like, not like a disclosure, like that I may not be right here, but like, I feel like I definitely feel like I'm wrong occasionally. And I just think that sometimes, there are occasions where I'm seeing stuff on TikTok or Instagram where it's like people are kind of saying something as if it's like a 100% fact, and it maybe not, right. Maybe it's not 100% wrong, but maybe it's 50% wrong. But I just, if I can give a piece of advice to somebody who is trying to do content or trying to learn about sports cards, just know that like, even being in here in this industry since like the beginning of 2018, like spending thousands of hours doing research and thousands of hours making content, like there's still stuff that I get wrong all the time, because you can't know everything. And I've just found that that's kind of the case. And I feel like sometimes maybe people think that they know everything, and it's not their fault, because, they're coming in and they maybe came from another place of doing content where maybe it wasn't as confusing as like sports cards are. So like sports cards, definitely I find myself being a little bit confusing sometimes. And, as kind of the new people come in and the hobby grows, like, do you think there's something that could change within sports cards that would really maybe make it easier? Or like, what do you think is a big change that could happen that would make the hobby better overall?
I think this year you're going to see more outlets for people to move their cards. The liquidity of cards, I think, is going to skyrocket. Whether it be something that I'm going to start a new mini series type of deal on. I'm going to be covering Star Stock and like adventure and like my dealings and stuff on Star Stock. But places like that, fractional ownership, Star Stock, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all these different areas outside of eBay. I really think you're going to see the rise of a lot of alternate areas for people to move cards. And I think that ultimately is a wonderful thing for the hobby. I think the farther we can get away from just Facebook groups and eBay, the better. Like there needs to, like, people should be able to find a place that they love, a marketplace that they love and they want to deal with. And we have a couple of small ones that are growing now, a couple of little things, but it all somehow harkens back to Facebook or one of these other things. You know, it always ends up coming back to it. And so if we can kind of separate those away and keep building up these other things, and you're seeing big companies coming in, don't think the person that just bought that mantle bought it to put it in his safe. He's a tech guy and an entrepreneur. There's a reason he bought that card, and you're gonna find out. We're all gonna find out what the reason is and what the company is that
Right.
card will be showcasing soon. And so I think honestly, and I'm in the minority here, I know, but I think this stuff and the technological like kind of revolution we're having in the hobby right now, I think is wonderful, and I think it's something that is going to safeguard the hobby 1000% from that collapse, that doomsday collapse that everyone wants to say is ultimately coming. So that would probably be the one thing that I could say.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all the points that you made about the technology, and I think even just in the past like 6 months to a year, like at least from my knowledge, there's been more innovation and more change that's happened in the hobby than maybe there had been in the past like 10, 15 years, which like when you see, I can definitely see it from a hobbyist perspective who maybe doesn't want to, they're not looking to sell their cards for a profit.
Right.
I can see how that could frustrate them. And I could see how, you know, somebody who's been in this since like 1986 and they've done collecting throughout their whole entire life. And now it's like, and they were collecting maybe like Prism cards, and you know, even 2 years ago you could buy boxes of Prism like at Blowout or at the National. You could buy those hobby boxes for like $90, and now you're looking at those boxes being like a few $1,000s. So I understand how that can be frustrating, but like, you know, I just wish that, or at least not I wish, I hope that sometimes there is something that can come in that can kind of cater towards that audience maybe a little bit more, like whether it's a lower end product or it's maybe a higher end product that is, I don't know, you know, I don't know exactly what it is. Like I'm always racking my brain of different types of innovations and stuff that can change in the hobby. So, I mean, I agree with what you're saying there. And I think the innovation stuff, like I just see it as a good thing where, you know, I maybe think some people don't. And I also think the innovation and technology is going to reveal that maybe there are some, like you were saying with the Luka card, there's maybe going to be some interesting opportunities for someone to maybe either make money or to just learn about something new. That the technology is I'm trying to figure out the exact wording of it, but like it's finding like a blank space that no one really investigated. For a perfect example is this Luka card. Like no one knew that someone knew at some point. You know, it's like it just someone made the decision to do it. So it's like, I think that the innovation and the technology is kind of going to reveal some of those things maybe in the future a little bit more. At least I hope so. It does.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I do totally get the old school collector that, you know, the technology and everything, it's frustrating for them and everything. And I get that. My advice right now would be to get out of Facebook rooms, because when you're stuck in Facebook rooms with a bunch of people that are older men that are looking for the best deals and that's it, yeah, it's going to completely sully your views on what you remember 30 years ago. Those are the wrong places for you. But I do hope, like you said, that is something that could be tremendously improved, and a very good idea. Anyone that's listening, start it up, but an area that kind of does cater to that, you know. What is it? I always forget the company, where there's a couple of different sites that do have, you know, that focus on the old school collecting aspect, but there isn't one that's done it the right way yet.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, for you with all of this stuff that you've got going on, like, is there anything that you've got coming up that you haven't released yet? Or like, what are you looking forward to in this next year? Like when it comes to content and stuff in the hobby that you've got going on?
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll announce it here. Better now than never. Kind of teased it a little bit on this week's episode of the show. We had Blake Jameson and Card Killer on, but going to be starting a brand new show. It's going to be a mix between they're going to be short, kind of more like 15, 20-minute video tops. And then they're going to be accompanied with written articles. But like I said, it's going to all focus on Star Stock, and it's going to take a look at different strategies, different methods. Like right now, I just sent in 2,000 base cards, and I plan on turning those into 2 Prism basketball hobby boxes. And so, things like that, showing people different ways you can use it, different ways you can, make money on this, different ways you can flip, do different things, buy cards to grade, just really the Star Stock experience, so to speak. We're still fleshing it out a little bit, but gonna take a look and focus on that. I'm not a paid spokesman or anything by any means necessary. It's just it's a platform that I found that I absolutely love, and I think in 2021 you're gonna see this thing blow up. And there is, for the people that are in this to make money, there might not be a better platform right now than Star Stock. And so that's something that I'm going to be doing. But other than that, just continuing, let me get that Podagraph and making it bigger and bigger, and hopefully a lot more really big specials. I want to start doing a lot of live video specials in addition to our regular weekly show.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, Star Stock is a platform that, I've used. I was part of their football contest, which was super fun. I think that they're the one thing that I really like most about them, and I guess I sort of haven't paid, sort of haven't, but either way, the one thing that I do think that has really changed on that platform that I think is a big deal is kind of their offer versus like buy it now kind of thing. I feel like that we've seen that a lot in like sneakers, like in like StockX does it that way. And I think I'm not sure how familiar you are with MLB The Show, but like MLB The Show has like a card platform that like essentially you can buy and sell, and it's exactly the same. So it's like, or it's very similar to like the buy orders and the sell orders. Like you can do it that way. So I think, that's definitely a platform that I've obviously got my eye on, and that is definitely a good one. So I got one more question before we wrap things up here. A question that I ask all my guests on the show: what is your dream card?
Oh man, it's so hard. This is always such a tough question because there's a couple, but the one, if I had to narrow it down to one, God, you're giving me a tough one here, but I would have to go with probably the Luke Key. No, I'm going to change it. I'm going to go a triple auto patch of Patrick Waugh, Peter Forsberg, and Joe Sakic.
Wow, it's a throwback.
Yes. That's really, hockey was my thing back in the day. It was everything. The Avs were everything. I modeled my game after Forsberg, and hey, Juke, he just doesn't make the cut on this card, unfortunately. But if I could have and I mean, I've got a ton of their autos. I've got Patrick Waugh sticks, helmets, everything, autographed jerseys, but don't have a card with the 3 of them together. So the 3 of them together would be awesome. And backup, which almost was the winner, would be Luke Kuechly's top chrome superfractor auto.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah. So like I said, I want to thank you so much for coming on. If you haven't checked out the episode that I did on your show, it's episode 111. Yes. So let the audience know kind of where they can find you all throughout the internet.
Sure. Well, quick way is to just go to waxpack.audio, and that'll give you the links over to SoundCloud and iTunes, but we are available on almost every single platform, sans Spotify. We are on all the other platforms: Anchor, Podbean, Google Play, Stitcher, all that stuff. But you can easily just go to soundcloud.com/letmegetthatpodograph, and you can find it there, or it's on iTunes, like I said. And it is Let Me Get That Podograph. And on social media, our social medias are LGTP Podcast. And on Instagram, LGT Podagraph. So you can reach out to me. I'd love to. I'll answer any questions you have. If you have a question about the hobby, anything, I'm here to help you guys as much as possible. Hopefully, I can answer it for you. If I can, I definitely will. Yeah, man, it's been a pleasure. Been wanting to come on the show for a long time. So thanks so much for having me, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for coming on.
Absolutely.